Welcome to Deal or No Deal. Today, Raph is with us today, and we have a suitcase for him. Here's the deal.
Okay, what's the deal?
You give me $5 million now, and when you die, I'll give you $5 million back. Believe it or not, this relates to the movie we're going to talk about today.
I'm trying to figure out if this is worth it for me. So, if you give me the $5 million after I die, that's kind of like a life insurance type thing. Who gets the money?
Don't think that far ahead. Deal or no deal?
No deal.
Welcome to our podcast, Couch Theater.
Yep.
Today we're going to talk about a movie that came out called The Green Knight. We both came into the movie. We didn't do any research on it really. I had no idea what the plot was or what the themes were. But it turns out it's actually based off of an very old poem or story, right? Folklore.
Like an Arthurian legend, basically. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. By the way, we're talking about the Green Knight. Yeah, it's just a really old poem about, Arthur's nephews and his knights and just being tested. And I haven't read it.
Yeah. Assuming that you guys watched the movie, I guess we could maybe go over a few points that are similar.
To the original?
Yeah.
I don't know what's similar and what's not about the original.
So, it is similar in the sense that there is a knight named Gawain, and I don't know how to pronounce his name. There is, on Christmas Day, a guy who appears called the Green Knight, and he offers this challenge, or we should call it game. And the game is basically, a blow for a blow. And so Gawain in the original story also does try to cut his head. I don't know if it goes all the way through or something like that. I think it went all the way through, yeah. And in a year's time, he's supposed to come back, go to a green chapel to meet the Green Knight, and the Green Knight is going to return that blow. Yeah. All right, and that's basically that, and there's some journey there. Another common thing I guess I should just highlight, the story, if you watch the movie with the Lord and with the lady, that's also a prevalent part of the story in the original text, I believe. But we can just leave it at that and move on to the actual movie.
Yes. This adaptation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is brought to you by Lysol. Get your Lysol today.
I really thought we were going to choose something green.
Oh, Brought to you by...
Eco-friendly straws.
They suck. Get it? Ha! No, by A24 Films, which is the movie house responsible for Lighthouse, Uncut Gems, a bunch of other, I think, not Birdcage, I can't remember, but a bunch of very artistic movies. They're definitely sort of the old school form of cinema where they have directors coming in to give you a vision of something.
They're not trying to make sequels.
No, they're not trying to make a franchise. They're not doing any of that. They're just giving you that old school movie experience, of the Scorseses and those kind of directors of the past. So that's what they're all about. This was, like Sam said, I went into it also pretty blind. I haven't seen bits of the trailer. I knew there was some sort of exchange. I knew Dev Patel was in it. That's about it. So after the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, but I'm down for the ride. I hadn't seen anything by A24 before, so I didn't really know what to expect. But yeah, overall I'd say it was good.
Yeah, it was a really good movie.
I'd say positives, negatives, non-spoiler version.
I would say the pacing is pretty interesting. It's a bit slower than what we're used to in modern day film, but I like it because it gives you time to really dig deep into exactly the power dynamics between the words that people are speaking, right? Instead of being bloated to we need to move on to the next point. We need to move on to the next point of the plot. It's more take time to understand what is going on behind the characters' minds through the small actions that they take, not necessarily huge, always drastic actions, but through the small ones as well. Any other thoughts you would have?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of that, I'd say that was interesting to me, but it's definitely one of those things that's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also probably depends on your mood. You might just not be in the mood for that kind of thing, or you might be in the mood for it. I would say I really enjoyed like the world building that this did. It was, there were definitely different parts as the pacing sort of meandered in places. It's definitely visually and just verbally, you hear little bits of things that just kind of paint this picture of what this world looks like beyond this character's journey. And I don't know, I enjoyed that. It was something that I can imagine could easily get cut out of this movie, and you don't really lose anything like in terms of the plot and the characters, but you probably lose something in just the whole vibe of the entire movie.
It was I believe, what is the term? It's like a soft magic.
Soft magic? Soft magic is a different thing. I'd say this. Maybe the term you're looking for is like the iceberg approach or something like that. Like they show you a couple of things here and there just to make you fill in the blanks of what the rest of this world can have.
They don't really explain all the fantastical elements to it.
True.
Which is sometimes really nice because you get into a sort of novelty. A lot of more things when they try to explain everything, it's something that they piggyback off. Like, the idea of the Force, people take that idea and you heard it before. This allows you to not give you a sense of wonder that you're not sure what's going to happen next. Could some naked Titans show up? Perhaps. For the record, they kind of do.
Yeah, there's this sequence where there's just giants walking, and they very much look like the Titans from Attack on Titan, and it is so weird. That was world building, I guess, but what purpose did that serve in that story? None.
Not that we know of. Yes.
Not that we know of. I really doubt that was in the original too. But overall, I thought the performances were good as well. Dev Patel was pretty good.
Yeah.
The Alicia Vikander,
who plays two different characters.
I thought she probably had the best performance in the entire thing. Overall, solid performances from everyone. Good visuals. I'd say if you're in the mood for a trippy movie, trippy is not the right term, but it is kind of a trippy movie. A movie where you're not there to...
If you're having an existential crisis...
This is probably not the movie for you.
It captures that mood.
Yeah, it definitely captures that mood. There's, I don't know what the mood is, but you definitely need to come into this with like different expectations than like going in to watch Avengers or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would say it was solid 9 out of 10.
Do we want to do a quick breakdown of the actual movie, just
of what happens?
Yeah.
I can certainly try.
Without talking about any symbolic elements or anything yet.
Gawain, who is our main character, played by Dev Patel, is the nephew of a king. He's also a knight, but he's a young knight who hasn't really accomplished anything yet. So, the story starts off with him just sort of being a guy in a town who's, probably destined to be king or something, but he hasn't really accomplished anything yet. And then the Green Knight shows up and offers this deal or this game, and he takes that up. Probably not really understanding what he was getting into, and then she strikes it and chops off his head, and then he has to face the consequence of, in a year's time, he's going to have to meet this guy and have him chop off his head. And the year passes really quickly, and then he goes on this journey.
I suppose he meets one guy, a kid, presumably, and the kid gives him directions and tells him to go in this other direction, actually, and he takes his word for it and then gets ambushed by the kid and his friends.
Are we just going to jump into spoilers now?
I guess so. We got to, if we're going to cover all the symbolic themes and all that.
Yeah, I guess could give it like a nice break point of like, if you still want to see the movie without us like going into detail, this would be the point to hop off.
Yes. We'll give you 2 seconds.
1,
2. So, and then he gets ambushed. They take the axe from him. The axe is something that the Green Knight wields. And he's left alone, and he finds a way to untie himself. Finds a house called Miss Winifred.
Saint Winifred.
Saint Winifred's house, who turns out to be a ghost, and he has to find her skull in a pond or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Some weird imagery there. I'm not going to get into that right now, but he finds the skull, places it on the bed, and presumably she's released or something like that. Then he meets, I think, some trolls. Eventually he hits the important part, which is a castle of the lord, the lady, and this old woman who has a blindfold on.
Actually, I think he passes out or something right before he gets there.
Yeah.
Because he wakes up in the castle. I can't remember exactly what happened right before. Right before was the interlude, which had the giants and stuff. So something happened at the end of that. I think he ends up falling down or passing out anywhere. Anyway, he wakes up at the castle with the lord and lady and the blind woman. They tell him, you're just a day's journey from the Green Chapel. And he tells them it's December 21st, so he's got lots of time, so he can rest here and recover. And they're sort of just being great hosts. But the lady is definitely being sensually testing.
I'm sorry.
And the Lord is, I guess, just being a jolly old fellow. He goes out hunting, and it's definitely a weird scene because the lady is definitely showing up a lot. She does this weird painting that's kind of like a photograph of him.
Upside down.
Yeah, but she like uses light to like capture an image. It is kind of like a photograph.
Yeah.
But that notwithstanding, the Lord sort of tells him that to make a deal with him, because everything's about deals in this world, and he will give him the best he gets from the hunt he's going on if he gives him whatever thing he happens to come across in his house or gain in his house. He ends up, basically the lady comes to him in the morning and she has the girdle. So I guess if we backtrack all the way to the beginning, before he goes on the journey, his mother gives him this girdle and tells him, as long as you have this on, you're basically indestructible and can't be killed by anything. And then he loses that in the forest when the bandit sort of bandit him. And now this lady has the girdle. How does she have it? We don't know. She claims to have made it herself, so maybe it's a different girdle, but probably not. And he really wants this back because he's about to go to the temple. He would really like to be indestructible. And she once again offers an exchange where she'll give it to him if he give in to his desire.
Yeah, with some sort of lust.
Give in to his lust. And she also is played by the same actress who plays his love interest before he leaves town. I think that's supposed to indicate to us that he finds her attractive without him like doing anything weird. So he does give in to his lust, and they have what is either the weirdest sex ever, or she's just giving him.
Yeah. In either way, in exchange, she gives him the girdle.
He gives him
right?
the girdle, and then she tells him he has no honor.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's no knight. But now he has the girdle, and then he sort of panics. He turns around. I think he sees the blind lady there. Probably feels bad about this. Runs out of the house. Clip clop, and then comes across the Lord, and the Lord is saying, have you come across anything in my house? And he's like, nope. And then the Lord sort of intuits that he has and tries to take what was given, which is the sensual testing.
Through a kiss.
Through a kiss. And then he stops him, and then the Lord sort of also senses that there's more that he has that he should be given, but he doesn't give him. The Lord, instead of giving him his greatest catch of the day, he just lets it go. But the catch is the fox, which has been following him around anyway, so it's like, did this really matter? Not really. And then they move on. He comes to a river and a little boat there where he can cross to go to the chapel, and the fox turns on him and tells him to stop and go back around. That the Green Knight, basically doesn't mess around and is going to kill him. And he's like, my honor, I'm a knight, I must, etc. And the fox tells him to take off the girdle, and he says no. And then they spat, and he crosses. Yeah. He crosses, and
he gets essentially to the Green Chapel, and eventually faces him and runs away for his own life. Then has like a little time period of where it shows like his future.
Yeah.
Of him becoming a king and him like not being nice to the
love interest from the beginning. I forget the character's name.
Essel.
Not being super nice to her, and probably I guess what it's showing is like he comes back and like he's carrying this burden of like having not done the thing.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks he has done the thing, so he feels like conflicted, and he's probably like slowly becomes not the person he wanted to be, but a very like shallow version of that, and even that shallowness sort of gets stripped away over time, and he becomes reviled. Yada yada.
Sounds
yada.
like interpretation.
That interpretation? I mean, what else am I gonna do with this movie?
Anyhow, it turns out, right, he dies due to a siege, and it turns out he was actually still at the Green Chapel. He removes his girdle, and accepts death.
Are we giving people a play-by-play of what happened in the movie they have presumably seen without giving them any interpretation?
Well, let's talk about this. Yeah, let's talk about the symbols now. Which one would you like to cover first?
Take it away. What symbol do you want to cover?
Okay, the one I have the hardest with, and this might be because I'm colorblind, is the colors. What does green symbolize?
Nature.
Nature is one. It also sounds like, due to the lady's rant about color, she said green represents the thing after red, the thing after lust, after desire, like the acceptance of reality or something. I don't know.
I think it still falls under nature because this is all that remains. Once, before man comes and has all his impulses and his desires, you have nature. And after man comes and after he's done all the things he's going to do, he's going to die, and nature will reassert itself. Because you can fight it for a little bit, but it will always win, kind of thing. Which might dovetail into like a different theme of like that honor versus nature, or honor versus sort of your baser instincts. Like he is going on this journey trying to basically be a knight and uphold those virtues, but throughout the entire time he's just a guy, and a young guy who hasn't really experienced much, and he's stumbling across the way. He's falling into kind of obvious traps laid by bandits, and like giving into his carnal desires and all of that stuff, and he's failing his way forward. He's not a bad person. There is a conflict there, I guess.
Yeah. Green seems to represent quite a bit. Would you say nature in the sense just physical nature, or nature in the sense of reality, the way things are?
I'd say the latter, just the way things are, the way things are when you're not, actively trying to assert some other order on top of things.
I see. Yeah, I think I could agree with that. Another simple symbol would be the girdle.
It's a very like Achilles heel type thing.
I saw it more as the symbol only makes sense in context with him. I think it kind of symbolizes his desire to live, because it offers protection and stuff, but I think the true symbol is that him holding on to it is him having a desire to live. And you were talking about like how he wrestles with that more basic instincts, which is the desire to live versus upholding honor or upholding the knight chivalry, all that stuff. That's kind of
the sash is green.
It is green,
which is something.
He did wear green, right, throughout the...
I think so. I think he was wearing green for a good bit.
I was too colorblind to tell.
I have to say I was not paying too much attention to what colors they were wearing.
I see.
Throughout the entire thing. He's basically tied himself down with it. It's literally tied around his waist. And I don't want to say he doesn't want to live when he takes off the sash, more that he's accepted that death is an outcome. Death is better than giving up everything he stands for. Initially, he's holding on to the sash above everything else. That is because he wants the sash that he, is sensually tested, kind of thing. And then eventually it's like this, if I live and, become everything I did not want to be, then what was the point of living?
Yeah.
Which is sort of the journey he goes on through in the temple.
Yeah.
Chapel.
So he holds on to both simultaneously. He tries to keep both for the longest time in the journey, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to uphold that nobility. He wants to, right? And because like when he's talking to the Lord asks him, why are you doing this journey? And he's like, for honor.
Yeah.
For chivalry, right? To be that good knight. But at the same time, he also holds on to the girdle. He's holding on to both at the same time, and he has to let go of one.
Yeah.
Towards the end.
What did you think of just that whole section with Winifred?
So here's a weird thought. I don't know if that's in the original story, but I kind of felt like there was a parallel with Ebenezer Scrooge with this story. So, especially since there's spiritual elements. So in Ebenezer Scrooge, you have the ghost of the past, right? That shows him about the past. You have the ghost of the present, who is a more jolly figure. And then you have the ghost of the future that basically, in a way, is death himself, showing him the ultimate Like, you cannot escape death. So here's the parallel. I think Winifred in many ways, well, not in many ways, in one way, symbolizes that kind of ghost of the past. It's her story, right? She's dead, but she needs her bones to be put together, laid out on a bed or something for her to be
at peace,
right? So there's a dealing with the past there. And then when you get to the castle with the Lord and the Lady, the Lord very much is a more of that, like, he's a hunter, joyous figure. I've watched Ebenezer cartoons and felt like he was that kind of, gave me that vibe. And then finally you hit the Green Knight, which is, we'll talk about it maybe more later, but represents death, right? In many ways, the inevitability of death.
The endable thing.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's true or not, but I felt like these stories kind of almost connected a little bit with that parallel. And whereas Ebenezer Scrooge teaches more like virtue, I'm not entirely sure that the lesson here is about virtue.
I don't know that they were shooting for a specific message. I don't know, I just don't feel like that it came away. I mean, I guess there's more prominent themes of like acceptance and stuff like that. Like, obviously by the end of it he takes off the girdle, and that says something, but I don't know if they're necessarily saying he should not have followed the bandit's direction. Are they saying he should have been more kind? Are they saying he should have been less kind? Are they saying he should have been more scrutinizing of what people were telling him, like more intelligent? Are they saying he should have been more aggressive when they showed up and like fought more? Like, what? I don't think the movie's really telling you this is what he should have done. They're just saying, here's this inexperienced guy and here's how he landed here, and leaving it for you to like take what you want to take from it.
Yes, I would agree that I don't think it's saying how a person should act.
Yeah.
I think what they're trying to tackle more is, you're talking about nature. I think, how about we delve more into what the movie says about human nature? Because there's titles that show up on the screen and it's kind of like in calligraphy and it's hard to read. But
it's very hard to read. I have most of them except the last two.
Okay. But like there's one about kindness, and that's with the boy that ambushes him, right?
Yeah.
So I think the movie toggles a lot about the idea that the main character initially I think operates under the assumption that there is kindness in the world. We also see that with him and Esso. Like, Esso genuinely seems to love him. So there's this basic human, we see this kind of like what we see in movies where there's the idea that kindness exists in this world, the idea that love exists in this world. But if we break it down, the movie, I think there's a lot about the human instinct or human nature being driven by utility, by being driven by the idea of exchange.
I was gonna say, I think that's like what you just said is more it, because while he's not an unkind person at the start, I think the movie was saying that kindness is sort of an afterthought for him, because he is in a sort of relationship with Essel, but she is, a prostitute, and she definitely loves him and is trying to get more out of the relationship. He's definitely not reciprocating that, or I don't know if he's leading her on or is just trying to have fun, but he's not doing anything there. And then when he's traveling, he comes across the bandit guy, and the guy offers him directions, and he's sort of just like, thanks, and walks away. And he's sort of leaving this way. He's walking through a place
he takes his word for it.
Yeah, he takes his word for it, but also like he just walked through this battlefield where there's a bunch of dead bodies. And he comes across this person who's presumably in grief, and he just takes his word for it and moves on. And he doesn't in any way attempt to help him until the guy calls him out for it, and then he tosses him a coin. So it's not that he's unkind, but like he's not thinking about how he can help other people.
Yeah.
It's more like he's trying to get something, but not necessarily trying to give something back.
And the whole movie is just a bunch of exchanges, right? The whole game about like blow for blow, that's an exchange, right, of blows. And then you have that exchange where with him and the bandit, where the bandit expects something in return for what he has given him, even though it's wrong. There's that expectation. And when he meets Miss Winifred, the ghost, she's asking him to get the skull, and he's like, what do I get in exchange for that? And she's like, why would you even ask that?
Why would you ever ask that?
And at the castle, there's an exchange, right, with the woman, the lady, there's an exchange with the Lord.
Yeah.
And so there's, I think, a lot, there's a theme of exchange, and I think what it's trying to say is that humans don't operate under kindness per se. They operate under exchange, under utility.
Like there's no true altruistic, motivation behind anything. It's always some form of exchange.
Yeah, I forget who came up with it, but there was a philosopher or somebody who talked about utilitarianism, right? That people want to maximize their own best gains, and they want to minimize the amount of pain they have or the amount of loss they have, and every interaction with humans are rationally calculated basically under that, like, do I gain anything from this relationship?
Yeah, I think we're talking about the calculus of benefit or something like that.
Yeah, there's no altruism essentially, right?
Yeah. What about death?
Death. Oh man. I have some thoughts, but I'd like to hear yours first.
I honestly don't have too much thoughts about it, because I feel like death in a story is usually just... I think it's hard to do anything with death as a theme in a story without it being this looming, inevitable thing that you have to accept or that you will struggle against. And I feel like that's what we saw here. Like, he struggled against it, and in the end he had to accept it. And I don't know if I've ever seen the death theme played out in a different way. So usually with death as a theme doesn't do too much for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean, it's obviously very important, but it's not bringing anything new to the table.
So the whole idea of nobility, of aspiring for greatness, that was actually bestowed upon him by the king. When he gave the exchange, and he was told that in a year's time he needs to go to this green chapel, I was like, what if you just don't go?
So
yeah,
I have a cookie theory about that. This is probably me just extremely reaching, but when he had that vision of the future when he ran away, at the end of it, he's sitting in his throne room, and like his kingdom is being attacked, and I felt that was the Green Knight. That like what had been happening to his kingdom this entire time was, the Green Knight's nature or whatever coming back to collect.
And he was decapitated. So that's why I think the Green Knight represents, I think Green Knight represents death or nature, deathly nature. So I think that's the point, because he imagines kind of like what it's like if he escapes this one solution, but the point of life is that you can't escape death itself, right? No matter what you try, especially his life where he's now doesn't trust people, he's not going to be kind, really. His life is pretty pointless, even though he's a king, even though he lays siege to others. Eventually death comes to him no matter what, and it's only after that, realizing that he's able to accept death at the very last scene. Yeah. It's not the idea of honor, it's the idea that you can't escape him. So that's a very good point, I think. The whole year thing, the story says it doesn't really matter if he didn't go to it.
Yeah, that it would come eventually. And he does say when the knight tries to swing at him and he flinches, he says, "You've had a whole year to prepare." And he says, it doesn't matter if it's been a year or 100 years. It wouldn't change anything.
That line was really good. Yeah. That was juicy.
What I've thought about a lot is the fox, and I have not come to any reasonable conclusions about what the fox is. Because usually a fox is supposed to be cunning, but the fox here was kind of just a companion that was maybe trying to lead him the right way? ?
I was not able to decipher anything about the fox. People, I should say Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is a lot of people, so.
Yeah, that's true. I think one idea is that the fox in many ways represents himself. And so the fox talking is like that internal dialogue, that internal conflict that's happening within him. It's like, do I even have to show up to the Green Chapel, right? Do I have to do this? I could just leave. And then he chooses, through that internal conflict, he chooses to do it.
The fox definitely stopped those giants from crushing him. So, That scene was so out of left field.
I'm unable to decipher any coherent meaning out of that scene.
The world is much bigger than I am.
Well, at the very end of that scene, the screen tilts underside.
Oh, yeah.
So it made me feel like this whole... Oh, speaking of which. So it made me feel like he's walking in hell. He's already dead. So the reason why I think that, going all the way back to the bandit, when he's captured, he's tied up. And when they leave, there's like some fancy visual goes on and we see him as a skeleton. I think that represents his true death. So I think his true death is actually there. When what I mean is death of the character.
Yeah.
Because I think at that very point, he probably realized that he can't, like, this idea of kindness, of human interaction,
right
of
after
trust.
that, it's when he tries to exchange with Winifred.
Exactly.
Because before that, well, like I said earlier, he's not necessarily the kindest person either. He is still a kind person and a general positive person. And then when he's with Winifred, he is about to jump in and help, and then he pauses and he's like, "What do I get out of this?" kind of thing. So yeah, I can agree with that. That like there's a symbolic death of trust or something.
Yeah.
He loses some little bit of innocence there.
And so that whole, I'm just gonna call them titans. I guess I could call them trolls or giants, but I'll call them titans. When he sees the titans and the screen goes 180 degrees, flips. It made me just feel like, this is Hades. This is... I don't know if that really fits with the rest of it.
I think that was... Someone was just really happy to do a 180 flip. Scene shot.
It takes a lot of time to write a story. It's perhaps the one spot in the story where they're like, maybe they were high.
Because, the entire interlude section... it's actually the section I remember the least. Because that's right after Winifred... I forget how Winifred ends exactly. Oh, he gets the axe back.
He gets the axe back.
He puts her skull back on with the rest of her body, and then the axe is there. So that is one thing about the entire movie that I was sort of lost by. There had to have been some symbolic reason why he kept losing and regaining the things he had been given when he left, but I couldn't piece it together. I can understand that with the girdle or the sash, whatever you want to call it, he was holding on to it too tightly. But at the same time, I'm like, whoa, how did he get back there? And especially with the axe, he loses it to Bandit Guy, and then the axe just shows back up, and I'm like, I my head is telling me that some symbolic thing is happening, because this movie, as we said, is very artistic. Nothing. I try not to take anything literally, but I'm like, well, what does that mean? Why is the axe back? What has he done? Like, has he done something to regain, quote unquote, the axe? I don't really see it. Also, the horse, actually. By the end,
the horse.
Like, he loses the horse again with the bandits, and then he goes throughout the entire thing without the horse. And once he leaves the Green Knight's chapel, the horse is there. What?
So I have 3 responses for each item. For the axe, I have no idea.
Okay.
That's my response.
Nice.
For the horse, I felt like that was just a plot device so that we don't have to see him take too long to get back.
I mean, they could have just shown him walking.
I guess so. I thought it was like, oh yes, so we can immediately just go back to him now being back. But for the third one, the girdle. So here's where the original story is helpful.
Okay.
The Lord turns out to be the Green Knight, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And the old lady who has the blindfold on turns out to be the stepsister of Arthur, which is AKA in the movie, the main character's mother, right? The connection there is that the mother at the beginning actually puts on a blindfold as she's doing some magic stuff, right? And so there's a connection there. And the idea, I think, is that she gave him back the girdle.
I see.
Yeah.
To continue the test.
One random thought. The whole central part with the lady, it was very interesting. It felt like prostitution. Essel and the lady is both played by the same actress, right?
Yeah.
And back at home, Essel is the prostitute, and she loves him and wants something from him, right? And he kind of seems to have a little bit more power in that relationship. But in this place, where played by the same actress, the lady has something to offer him, and he needs to fulfill some sort of central act.
A central test, if you will.
Central test slash act to receive what he wants, right? He is basically prostituted to get this thing that he wants to protect himself. Anyhow, just a thought.
Yeah. I had thought about something, and I think it's gone. It's so gone.
I have no more thoughts, I don't think, so it's all you from here.
I did enjoy, again, artistic movie. Everything I say is basically just the way I'm interpreting the movie. I did enjoy the hero's journey. So, at the start, Arthur asked him to tell him some story about him, to learn to know about him more, and he's like, I haven't done anything yet. And then he goes on this journey, and all the knights of the Round Table are legends. He knows them. They've all done great things. I don't personally know who the knights at the Round Table are, so I can't list all the great things they've done. But they have certainly done great things. And he wants to go do his own great deeds. And this journey he goes on is kind of not a fun journey. He goes out, he's kind of alone, and he gets robbed, and like he just loses some of his innocence and like trust in the world. And at certain points he loses the thing that makes him a knight. Like he fails to uplive all of that. And then he comes back, and it's a great story. Everyone praises him and stuff, but like, I guess that journey he went on, like, we can talk about the story and the legend and like at this black box, and it can sound great, but like, I guess it's sort of the way people gloss up and glorify war and warriors, and how it's all great to be a battle-hardened warrior and stuff. When you're actually there, actually doing it, there's nothing glorious about it.
I quote Yoda. When Luke was saying, I'm looking for a great warrior, which was Yoda, Yoda replies, war does not make one great.
Young Padawan.
Yeah, I agree. He did not look like a knight at all. It was never in question. He was always he never met the expectations to me of a knight.
And I would take that the next step to say that no one meets up to the expectations of a knight. Everyone's just constantly trying to, at every single point, live up to it, and sometimes succeeding, sometimes failing. Yeah, did you enjoy this movie?
I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
It felt unique. There was good pacing. It's not overbloated with characters. Instead, it's overbloated with symbols and themes.
Yeah.
Which made it very interesting for, I think, both of us to try to decipher, okay, what is the movie exactly trying to say? How do these all fit together?
Yeah. Watching some video about Martin Scorsese talking about cinema. Because that's where we're at in the world. And he was basically saying that, the way I understood it, he wasn't knocking like Avengers or like the MCU or any of these kind of movies. He was really saying that there's a difference between those movies and like the movies that people used to make, like when I can't remember a single Martin Scorsese movie.
Silence.
Movies of those time, like that experience was a very different thing. Like you went to a cinema. Goodfellas.
Sorry.
You went to a cinema and like the audience was getting to experience what the director and the writers and everything, like a story they had to tell, a message, whatever. There was some artistic experience they were trying to put you through. Whereas with these newer ones, you don't get a lot of that. Not that they're not good or interesting, but there's a very different point to it. It's almost the entire thing is a product that you're being sold that's attached to other products. There's a theme park, there's merchandise and yada yada yada, and it's a completely different experience. I mean, he was saying one is cinema and one is not cinema. I think that is more controversial than he needed that statement to be. I think they're all cinema. They're just very, very different kinds of cinema.
Yeah.
And this movie is, in that latter half of kind of cinema that I haven't seen in a very long time. So, honestly, it's actually refreshing for me to sit down and not care about plot things. Like the axe showing up and the horse showing up. These are things that in a very different movie, I'd be like, where did these things come from? I would have questions and be trying to break down the plot and everything. And here, I don't care. There was a message, maybe, and I want to try and figure it out.
Yeah.
And even if there wasn't a message, it's not important because the movie was doing something else completely different.
I totally agree. You have house beat music and you also have classical music. You're not, there's a place for house beat music, It may not be as grandiose and like interesting and thought-provoking as classical music, but it has its place, which Endgame and all these other Avengers movies and the blockbuster movies that I think more often than not that's the movie we're going to tackle probably.
Probably, yeah.
Now we wonder why, but that's just the way things are. But there's a place for them. I wanted to go see Snake Eyes more than I wanted to go see Green Knight, but with the power of hindsight, I'm pretty sure I'm happy to have seen Green Knight.
Snake Eyes, is that the new Kung Fu one that's come out?
Yeah, it's a continuation of, or it's an origin story of G.I. Joe.
Origin story for G.I. Joe.
Well, of Snake Eyes.
A thing we all needed.
Remember when origin stories were like the hot commodity?
Oh man, how many Spider-Man origin stories have we gotten? How many Batman origin stories have we gotten? We all know that his parents got shot. The mother's pearls flew across and landed on the ground. I don't need any more anyone giving me that scene.
There's just something so delightful about seeing Bruce Wayne's parents die. Just so delightful. It's a masterpiece.
Origin stories are... they're not good.
Also, I'm joking. I'm not that cruel.
He is. You can see him laughing. He's got the evil glint in his eye.
Yeah.
I guess I can wonder a bit about the... So, I mean, the entire thing was a test. Saying what the point is kind of weird, but what is the point of the test? Because it seemed to me like it was not a sporadic test, like it was designed. The mother, Arthur, perhaps the Lord, like, they all had a part to play, and some of these, especially from what you're saying about the original, like some of this was designed specifically to test, maybe not Gawain himself, but to test someone. I wonder what the test was supposed to be, what the purpose of that whole testing was in some way.
So for any of you English majors out there or English teachers, I don't know the actual story. I don't think I'm going to read it and write an essay about it unless one of you comes to me and threatens me to give me an F on a course I'm not taking. But I think the original, was the idea of just testing, and through that you kind of see the interplay of fear versus nobility. I think in this story, though, it's the desire to live versus these human constructs that we create. So it's the human nature that you're talking about versus the human constructs that we try to uphold, right? The idea of doing what's great, makes you legendary or worthy. And even within the first 30 minutes, we see that, right? With people talk about how he gloriously slay the Green Knight, and it's like, no, the Green Knight put down his axe and gave his neck in a horizontal angle for a very nice clean cut. Like, would have been harder to chop butter at that point than that guy's neck.
Yeah, definitely. The stories definitely did get spiced up. Essel actually said, because he said he wanted to be great or something, and she said, why can't you just be good? So that was also very in line with the rest of it, like basically seeking greatness, and perhaps the folly of seeking greatness is...
You remember all the great lines, man.
I remember some of the things they said.
Well, I really liked these lines that you're pointing out. For some reason, I just forgot them.
I was trying to remember... I'm so upset about the chapter titles.
Yes.
Throughout the entire thing, I was like memorizing each chapter title, and then they got to when he's with the Lord and Lady, and it's an exchange of, and I couldn't read it. Like, I was just looking at it like, what does that say? And then we get to the last one, and I couldn't read anything. They picked the weirdest font choices. Like, I understand that they wanted to be stylized, but like, if it's text you're putting on the screen that I'm supposedly to read
for like a second,
please put it in a font I can actually read.
Yeah. Well, I have nothing else to add except one more thing. I was talking about Ebenezer Scrooge. Both have to do with Christmas. Bam. Done.
Boom. That was actually very surprising. I did not know this was a Christmas... I mean, it's not actually a Christmas story, but I assume maybe the original poem was a Christmas story. I am happy that we're getting this take on the Arthurian legend. Arthurian legends in like modern retellings are usually very... They basically tell us... We basically get the version that the legend is.
Yeah.
Right? If we had got... I don't know. some other studio that wasn't so committed to doing the original thing had done this, we would have probably gotten a very glorious mission and him going and getting stronger or fighting a great battle and defeating the Green Knight or something like that, and it would have just been a much less interesting story probably.
Speaking of which, you just gave me another thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. King Arthur is by no means awesome or great in this movie.
Honestly, does this movie even say? I don't know if it actually at any point says he's King Arthur. I just know it because I have now looked up the original tale.
I get that he's old, but even like as an old person, you just feel like he's some degraded king. Fits in line with everything else we're saying about like legends being too fantastical and people trying to aspire for things that are probably not true. Well. This has been a more thought-provoking episode.
Maybe, hopefully your thoughts have been provoked. Or maybe you have just been provoked. And if you've been provoked, you know what to do. Get in the comments! Let us know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, upvote, downvote. I don't care. Just vote. Vote, everybody. This is a democracy. Peace out.